Hey guys, welcome back to Life of Bliss. Today I thought I would take a quick moment to show you the differences in hooking up a processor or a pre-pro versus a receiver in your home theater. Now a lot of you guys who watch my channel probably already know the differences and how to hook them up, but there are constantly new people getting into the home theater hobby and a lot of people going from receivers to processors who may not know what they need to make that change. So hopefully at the end of this video you'll have a clear understanding of the differences between the two and how to hook up your speaker systems. Now I'm not going to be getting into specifics between these two models that I have sitting in front of me, but over to the right I have the Yamaha RXA3070 receiver, and over here is the Emotiva RMC-1L processor. Now these units are very similar, but there are a few key differences between the two. First off, receivers have internal amplifiers that can power speakers in your system, whereas processors have no internal amplification. This is important because these are kind of a one-stop shop. All of the components are in one box to where you can just put it in your room, hook up all your speakers, and go. Whereas processors, you're going to need some sort of external amplification to be able to power your speakers. Now you may be thinking that the receiver here is the better option. Everything's all in one box. You just hook up your speakers and go without having to buy any external amps. And while it may be easier, it doesn't always mean it's going to have the best sound quality. Processors usually are able to focus on sound quality and buy higher end components to put in them, and that gives them a better overall sound than you'll usually get out of a receiver. Now that's not to say that receivers sound bad, they just have to fit a lot more components inside the case, and in this particular model they have an amplifier to power 9 separate channels. When you start adding amplifiers into the unit itself, you can introduce noise over your signal, which you're not going to get with a processor like the Emotiva. Now, another advantage of going with separates versus a receiver is you're probably not going to be getting as much power to your speakers when you go with a receiver. This particular model, I believe, states 140 watts per channel, but that's only with one channel driven. If you've got 7 or 9 channels in your home theater and are driving them all at once, you'll be lucky to get about 80 watts per channel. Now when going with a processor, you can buy any amplifier with as much power as you need for your system, and if things change down the road, you can buy different amplifiers to fit your needs. So some of the basic differences out of the way, let me go ahead and turn these around and show you the differences on the back panels. Now in just a moment, I'm going to go step by step on how to hook up each one of these to your system, but the main difference on the back side is you'll see over here on the receiver is these 5-way binding posts to hook speakers directly up to the unit, whereas on the processor, there are no speaker terminals whatsoever. Now, not all receivers will have this, but this particular model has some RCA pre-outs here to hook up to an external amplifier, whereas the processor in this case only has XLR outputs down here on the bottom. Now, another quick advantage when using a processor versus most receivers in this case when hooking up to external amplifiers is how they connect. The processor here is using RCA cables, which is an unbalanced connection, versus the processor here, which is using XLR, which is a balanced connection. Now, without getting too deep into it, what this means is the XLR cables are able to shield some outside noise that may cause interference on the RCA cables. They have a lower signal to noise ratio, which is going to give you better sound quality over your system. Now I'll go over some options in hooking up a receiver in your system as well as hooking up the processor. Now I have the Yamaha receiver here and a surround speaker from OSD Black that has some speaker wire hooked up to the terminals in the back. We'll just plug our speaker wire into the correct terminal that it needs to be on the back, and it's ready to go. You'll just repeat this step all the way down the line for as many speakers as you have, and your home theater is ready to rock. Now with this particular receiver, you can hook up an external amp to power your speakers. This particular amp here is the Emotiva DR3, and it is a 3-channel amplifier. Now one thing that is very common for people to do is to use a 3-channel amplifier like this to power their front stage or left, center, and right speakers. This frees up a lot of power in your receiver's amplifier to be able to power the surround speakers. Now to hook up this receiver to an external amp, you'll need some RCA cables. You'll just plug one end into the correct output, the other end into the input on the amplifier. Then we have our speaker cables hooked up to our speaker, and we will throw that in the speaker terminals on the back. And now you have an external amplifier hooked up to your receiver ready to go. Now with the processor up here, you'll notice there is no option to connect speaker wire directly to a speaker to power it. Like I was saying, you will have to have external amplification to be able to power anything in the system, and you'll have to have enough channels of external amplification to power as many speakers as you need. This amplifier here only has 3 channels, like I said, so to power more channels, you're gonna have to have another amplifier or maybe 2 amplifiers or several monoblock amplifiers. There are tons of options, which is why these processors are kind of cool to be able to switch out amplifiers if you need to. But to power say a 7.1.4 channel system, this is only powering your front 3. You're still going to need, what, 8 channels? So you would need probably a 9-channel amplifier or a couple of other 5-channel amps to be able to power an entire system. So it is going to be a little more expensive jumping up to a processor and then buying amplifiers for all your amplification needs, but you will be getting a better overall sound quality out of your system by doing so. Now, speaking of sound quality, you want to make sure that you have nice cables when stepping up to something like this. You don't want to spend all this money on equipment and then have a lot of noise over your signal because of your cables or cables failing on you. To hook up the Emotiva in my system, I'm going to be using XLR cables from Blue Jeans Cables. Blue Jeans Cables has been around for years and is highly regarded as one of the best cable companies for home theater at a competitive price. Kurt, the owner, is extremely knowledgeable about all things cables and helped me figure out what I needed for this setup. He sent out 2 different products for me to hook everything up, which include several of these 6-foot-long XLR cables with canary wire that comes out of Japan, as well as this 8-connector snake cable. Now, the snake cable here has different colors for each channel, so you know exactly which channel you're hooking up to on each end of the cable. I really like these snake XLR cables because it allows you to run 8 XLRs through this one single wire, which helps with your wire management in the back of your rack. Almost all of the cables that come out of Blue Jeans Cables are cut to length, crimped, soldered, and connection ends put on in-house. This gives them the ability to have extreme quality control over the products that they ship out. Kurt, the owner, told me that they have over 250,000 feet of various wire at any given time to be able to make sure that they meet the customer's orders. Now, I'm super excited to use some quality cables in this setup to make sure I get the best sound possible. If you guys are interested in Blue Jeans Cables, I'll leave a link down in the description below so you can check them out. Now, to hook up the processor, I'm going to be using just one of these single cables here, but you'll take one end, plug it into the back of the processor, the opposite end, throw it in the back of the amplifier, and then take your speaker cable and plug it into the terminals. Now, you'll just need to repeat this step for every channel that you want to hook up to an amplifier, and your system will be ready to use. So there you guys go, a quick overview on how to hook up a receiver versus a processor. I hope the video was helpful for you. If so, please hit that thumbs up button. It really does help out the channel. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I've got a lot of content on home theater product reviews and DIY projects regarding home theater. Appreciate you guys watching Life of Bliss, and I will see you soon.